What's up, everybody? True Boxing here. Thank you for coming back to get hit with the truth. So today we are doing the what's next on former featherweight champion Mark Magsayo, following his second consecutive victory at 130 pounds, as he got a 10-round unanimous decision over, god damn it, I keep forgetting his name. I think it's Eduardo Ramirez. I think that's right. I can't remember, to be honest. I know it's yeah, I think it was Eduardo Ramirez. He got a 10-round decision on the Amazon Prime pay-per-view prelim card that took place on June 15th. Now, before we get into that, if you could smash the like button, leave a comment, or subscribe to the channel. I really do appreciate any and all support that I can get, excuse me, as I continue to build my channel here. So Magsayo looked pretty good. He was in pretty dominant fashion. He's carried his power up. He seems like a force to be reckoned with at 130 pounds. You know, he had those two close losses. The split decision loss to Ray Vargas, where he lost his world title. And then the, what should have been scored much closer, unanimous decision loss to Brandon Figueroa last year. Both at featherweight, and then he decided to move up. He destroyed his first opponent in one round, and then now steps his competition up against Ramirez and gets a clean 10-round unanimous decision here. Getting the rounds in is good too, because what I've noticed so far about Magsayo is he slows down late in fights. That, you know, that can be costly right there. But a nice win. So now the big question is, what's next for Magsayo following that victory? Well, Magsayo's ranked number 6 by 2 governing bodies. He's number 8 by the IBF and number 9 by the WBO. The WBC and the WBA both have him ranked at number 6. So he's not quite there for a title shot yet, unless he gets, you know, somebody is allowed to make an optional defense against him, which he brings the Filipino community to the table. You know, he is the first Filipino world champion since Manny Pacquiao. And he does bring a fan base. So that definitely is possible. But let's run through the top 10 and see what could be there for Magsayo next. We start with Emmanuel Navarrete. This one's not going to happen. Navarrete is the WBO champion. He, if he returns to 130 pounds following his loss to Barianchik, he has a mandatory fight and rematch with Oscar Valdez due by the WBO. So he's not going to fight Magsayo next. Then there's Robson Conceição. If Conceição beats O'Shaquie Foster in July, he becomes the WBC champion. He would be allowed to make an optional defense after that, most likely, unless the WBC mandate is not mandating him as the mandatory challenger. But these two guys work with rival promoters. You know, Conceição's with Top Rank, and Magsayo is with you know, the PBC. Now we are in a time where you know, the Turki Al-Sheikh from Saudi Arabia is making a lot of these cross promotional fights, but it would really have to make sense. So I think it could be possible, but I'm leaning towards the less likely that him and Conceição happens next. Then you got Joe Cordina, the former IBF champion. He's moving up to lightweight following his loss to Anthony Cacace, so I don't see Cordina being in the mix. Then we look at IBF champion Anthony Cacace. Well, Cacace is being allowed to make an optional defense on the Joshua Dubois undercard. It was just announced today that he's being allowed to make an optional defense against former 2-time featherweight champ Josh Warrington next. So, and also these guys are with rival promoters, so I don't see Magsayo and Cacace happening next. Then we got O'Shaquie Foster, the reigning WBC champ. Foster is fighting Conceição, as we said. If he's victorious over Conceição, I wouldn't be surprised if a cross-promotional fight could be made between Foster and Magsayo. But, you know, until those fights actually get made, it seems less likely that guys on this level that aren't huge names like Foster and Magsayo, and because it's also not a big-time huge fight, it seems less likely that the governing bodies or that Saudi Arabia will get in the mix to make a cross-promotional fight like this. So I'm leaning towards the less likely on this one. Then other options are for him. Shavkat Rakhimov, the former IBF champ. He's a DAZN guy. Magsayo is with the PBC. It would be a hell of a fight, but Rakhimov's coming off 2 consecutive losses. The last one by knockout. I don't think he'd want to get in there with a guy on the caliber of Magsayo, and it's a cross-promotional fight, hard to make, so I'm going to say no. Then you got the guy that beat Rakhimov, which is Eduardo Nunez. We know Nunez is going to have to wait for the winner of Kakachi and Warrington now, because they're allowing that fight, but I believe Nunez has ties with DAZN, so I don't think a cross-promotional fight with Magsayo would be on the table. Plus, Nunez is taking a big risk to fight Magsayo when he's already the mandatory challenger for the IBF belt. So I don't think he would want to take that fight. Then you got Lamont Roach Jr. He's a WBA champion, but Roach is already making an optional defense this week coming up against an unknown fighter. And then, for all intents and purposes, he has 2 mandatories waiting for him after that. I don't think Roach and Magsayo is going to happen next. Then you got Hector Luis Garcia. I would love to see this fight, and I absolutely believe that the PBC might make this fight if Garcia wants to get back in it after back-to-back losses to Tank Davis and Lamont Roach Jr. by a controversial decision. This one could really boost that. This could be billed as an eliminator in the WBA and could shoot the winner up to the top spot or one of the top spots at some point. So and also both guys are with the PBC, so I definitely think this one has some legs to it. There's Oscar Valdez, the WBO interim champion, former 2-division champ. I don't see this one happening right here. Valdez is with Top Rank, and he has a mandatory shot against Emmanuel Navarrete if Navarrete moves back down. And if he doesn't, he gets upgraded to full champ and pretty much can fight who he wants. Would he take an optional or a cross-promotional fight next? I only think that happens if Turki Al-Sheikh gets involved, which Valdez Magsayo would be a fucking banger right there. But I have to lean towards the less likely until I actually hear some news about a banger like that being made. But if there is one fight that could be made by Turki Al-Sheikh, it would be that fight, but it also would have to mean that Valdez would be upgraded to full champion because he's not getting the crack and rematch with Navarrete, if that makes sense. So I could see it. I have to lean towards the less likely until Turki Al-Sheikh gets involved. Then there's Edward Vasquez. If Vasquez, is not tied to DAZN, I think this is a fucking banger right here. Vasquez has been in there with Raymond Ford and lost the close decision. He's been in there with Joe Cordina, lost the close decision. I think he'd be down to fight a guy like Magsayo, but again, the promotions have to come together for a fight like that. Other guys, Zelfa Barrett, he's with DAZN and Matchroom, kind of a bad matchup for Magsayo in my opinion. I don't think he takes that one. Then there's Jordan Gill. He's coming off a knockout loss to Barrett, also with a different promotion. I don't see that one taking place. Rocky Hernandez, talk about a fucking banger and one that could be an eliminator, but Rocky Hernandez, I believe, is with Matchroom and DAZN, so tough fight to make since Magsayo's with the PBC. Lee Wood, another great matchup right here if it could be made, but Lee Wood is another Matchroom guy and works with DAZN, where Magsayo's with PBC and Amazon. Liam Wilson, he's coming off back-to-back. He's coming off 2 knockout losses in his last 3 fights, I believe. I don't think he'd want to get in there against a banger like Magsayo. Then there's Muhammad Yakubu. If Yakubov, if he's willing to risk his mandatory shot, his #1 contendership shot in the WBC, which I think he's still the top guy, and fight a guy with a name and a former champ like Magsayo, I think the fight could come together. I'm not too sure he's willing to do that. We'd have to wait and see. It's one of those fights that I think is possible, but the fight would have to be put together. Then there's Odar Nazian. He is the WBA, one of the WBA mandatory challengers. I'm not sure this fight could be made between these two. And I'm going to go back to Joan O'Carroll. He's the other WBA mandatory challenger. Joan O'Carroll, I don't think would fight a guy like Magsayo unless there was some incentive there. So I'm going to lean towards the less likely. Then some other names: Albert Bell, he was the number one WBO. Kenichi Ogawa, Archie Sharp, that Chevalier guy, Chevalier. All possible options for Magsayo, but again, these fights have to be appealing and have to make sense. So for Mark Magsayo, realistically, if we're talking about promotional fights that are absolutely possible next, I think Hector Luis Garcia is the most logical option, because they're both with the PBC, and it's a fight that makes a lot of sense that both guys, I think, would be into taking. But again, they have to want it. It would have to be an eliminator. But I really think there are a lot of possible options if cross-promotional fights could be made. I also think Magsayo is one of those guys that could be a Saudi Arabia type fighter for Turki Al-Sheikh. But it has to be a fight that makes sense. So we'll see what happens, but that's it. That's what I got. That's my what's next on former featherweight champion Mark Magsayo, following his 10-round unanimous decision victory over Eduardo Ramirez on the Amazon Prime pay-per-view preliminary card that took place on June 15th. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, smash the like button, leave a comment, or subscribe to the channel. I appreciate any and all support. This is True Boxing, and you've been hit with the truth.